Well, good morning and welcome to Elevenses. Hopefully everything will run fine today. I've tried a few tweaks that the designers of the software have suggested. So hopefully we'll have no stuttering problems today. Right, anyway, what have we got for you in today's show, which is a fairly busy one? Well, it's show number 283. It's Sunday the 30th of October. It's been a wet morning, although it is actually brightening up as I look out the window at the moment outside. So hopefully the rain has gone by, but it was raining pretty heavily here in London this morning as we move into the end of October. The clocks have done their thing, so hopefully you're live. If you're not, you'll be an hour behind. You'll be watching me on catch up this morning. We have a couple of people in this morning. Kevin says audio good, and Clive says good morning. Hello, good to see you both. Right, so what have we got to cover today? Well, we have the fairly astonishing story that a Brazilian biker's helmet appears to have deflected a bullet that was fired at him. Meanwhile, in the US, an anti-helmet campaigner has actually died of head injuries after crashing minus helmet. Wiltshire police allegedly couldn't believe their eyes as a biker carried a mountain bike on her motorcycle. KTM are to distribute CFMoto motorcycles in what I think is a pretty important deal. Honda are about to install, or maybe have installed by now, their first battery swap station in Tokyo. And they don't actually have any electric bikes yet. So that's a bit of a reverse of the situation here in the UK. The cost of running a motorcycle in Singapore will probably scare you, so we'll cover that as well. Harley are planning a 975 version of the Pan American, but they have got a recall out on the 1250. And BMW have also got a fairly important gearbox recall out on some of their bikes too. And finally, we'll have a look at the a Back to the Future moment, the Regina Zero Adjust sintered chains, which you'll also find on BMWs, incidentally. And we'll have a look at how this brand new technology is actually about 40 years old, but hey ho. So settle yourselves down for the next 40 minutes or so while I run through our stories. Hello, Sue. Good morning to you too. But just a few things to remind you of first of all. Now, if I can manage to get the right button, they've changed the buttons on the software, which is always confusing me. There it is. We should have the events up. Now, November's event is the Armchair Riding one, visualisation and other tricks that we can learn from sports psychology. I think this is going to be a fascinating talk, actually, but right now I've got 0 bookings for it. So if you are interested in turning up for that one, or of course watching it on catch up, because it will be available for several days after the event, use the link to the Tidy HQ page. I'll just put that up in the comment stream so you can see it easily. Do pop over and come along and book that talk up. And don't forget, it is available for several days after the live event if you can't make it live. If you can, of course, it's always nice. The other item I just wanted to share with you very briefly, the sunglasses, the yellow glasses that I wear myself. Some people have asked where they can get them. Well, I've actually got some back in stock, so you can order them from my coffee shop. There is the link to the coffee shop. Have a look, you'll find the sunglasses on order there. I'll get them out to you within a couple of days by post if you order them. These are the things in question. Let me just get the full screen back up so you can see what I'm showing you. There you are. As you can see, they are yellow lenses. They're actually interfering with my virtual background, which is interesting. But basically what they do is they contrast enhance. They also take out reflected light glare. So they're actually surprisingly good in bright sunshine as well. So I wear those under the helmet. They are shatterproof, they are impact resistant, they are scratch resistant. So generally I find I get a good couple of years use out of them, even dropping them on the ground fairly regularly, as I tend to do. So those are available on the shop. One-to-one coaching. I'm doing a new series of one-to-one live events, one which will be for one person only. The first one is riding at night. That will run from this weekend. Well, there's not much left of it really, but what is left of the weekend right through till the end of November. There are a limited number of slots for these. £40 plus a free ebook if you are a just an ordinary customer. But if you happen to be one of my supporters over on Coffee, then it is 50% off, and you still get the free ebook, of course. So do look over on my Coffee page too to find out how you can order that. That's a 1 hour one-to-one coaching on riding at night. You ask me the questions and I answer them basically. And finally, I'm just working on my next book. I won't spoil the surprise, but look out for a special offer around Black Friday. Right, so that's all the intro stuff that I wanted to get over. So on with the news. Now, the first story that I've got for you is a fairly shocking one, actually. A Brazilian biker has survived without a scratch, despite being shot in the head by some attempted bike jackers as he was riding past, and one of them pulled a gun out and actually fired at him. The bullet bounced off his helmet. The video footage was captured on his helmet cam, and it actually shows the moment in full as he went past two riders on the small Honda, and the deflected bullet actually struck the rev counter on the dash of his 2021 Harley Davidson Ultra Limited. The fact it was worth around £23,000 possibly explains the attempt. Now, the incident happened last Thursday near Sao Paulo. The rider was actually on his way to take part in a charity event where he and other bikers donated groceries to low-income people. He showed the camera footage to friends, one of whom actually put it up online, and then it was spotted by a police officer. And the officer actually managed to identify the two people on the bike from their number plate, even though it was partially obscured, and they were then arrested at their respective homes. Now, their names have not been disclosed, but the rider's age was given as 22 and the gunman's as 17, and they will be charged with attempted robbery and attempted murder. It turns out there are an estimated 17 million firearms in Brazil, of which more than half are unregistered, and the legal age for gun ownership is 25. And whilst it is generally illegal to carry a gun in public, there are special permits available for one who wishes to carry a gun outside of a residence. Fairly scary, really, isn't it? I always think. Right, across from South America to North America, and an American lawyer who spent years fighting to have motorcycle helmets made optional for Florida bikers has sadly died in a motorcycle crash. Ron Smith, 66, he took the issue to court in the 1990s, and the laws in Florida were changed in 2000, allowing riders over the age of 21 to ride minus protective headgear, just so long as they had taken out insurance up to the value of $10,000 which is roughly £8,800 in insurance coverage for injuries related to motorcycle accidents. Frankly, $10,000 wouldn't go very far if you had a head injury. Now, Smith was said to have lost control of his motorbike as he attempted to slow down for traffic, and he collided with a trailer attached to a truck in another lane. Sadly, his 62-year-old girlfriend, Brenda Jinan Volpe, was also killed in the crash, and neither of them were wearing a helmet. The initial report from the Hillsborough Medical Examiner's Office listed the causes of death in both cases as head trauma. Just how effective are helmets? Well, the road death toll in Florida increased 25% after the helmet law was repealed, according to one study, and the number of motorcyclists admitted to hospitals with head injuries jumped by 82% in 2.5 years after the change in legislation. Right, so okay, now here's an amusing in some ways story. Now this one involves a report from the Wiltshire Police Roads Policing Unit. Now, according to the rather I'm not quite sure what the right word is, actually. Strident's possibly not quite the right word. It's a bit self-congratulatory. It's a bit sensational as well. The police could barely believe what they were seeing, apparently, after they came across this motorcycle with what was said to be a badly secured load. Now, as you can see, the bike has a bicycle strapped to the back of it, and it was pulled in at Membry Services on the M4. And the cycle was said to have been, quote, dismantled and hastily strapped to the back of the motorbike using bright orange straps. One officer said they had never seen a bike loaded like this before. Well, all I can say to that is that these particular coppers clearly have limited experience of what can be carried on a motorcycle. My brother often carries his own mountain bike on the back of his motorcycle in a very similar fashion. And these cops obviously weren't around policing the roads back in the heyday of the motorcycle courier industry, because they would have presumably had kittens over some of the things we were tasked to carry. Now, whether the load was genuinely insecure, I obviously can't say, but the tie-down straps, if they're properly used, they can retain the modest weight of a bicycle, which is going to be, if it's a decent quality mountain bike, no more than about 15 kilos or 30 odd pounds. Should be able to restrain that very easily indeed. And the thing is about a motorcycle is that there are plenty of secure places to fix them. And if you have a look, it does in fact appear to me that the rider has actually done the decent thing, and the straps are firmly secured around the bike. They're firmly secured around the wheels. That appears to be a strap through the spokes, as well as one holding it laterally across the bike. So whether it would have fallen off or not is, I think it's probably a bit doubtful. And the other thing is that I also checked what actually are the rules on carrying a load, because it did cross my mind that if you do have a load like this and it projects beyond the boundary of the motorcycle, as it were, what are the regulations? Well, if it turns out that in fact you can carry things that project beyond the vehicle, just as so long as lights and number plates are still visible and you stay within the maximum load for the vehicle. And there are some rules about how you carry those things. So basically, for objects that project no more than 1 meter, either front or back of a vehicle, and it doesn't specify that it has to be a motorcycle as far as I can see, there are no specific requirements. You can basically load up and drive away. Now, if the load projects beyond 1 meter and up to 2 meters at the back of the vehicle, and my guess is that that bike is probably just under 1 meter, but the load must be made clearly visible and marked with something bright like a red cloth or a high-vis jacket. Now, I would say that that is definitely, certainly not more than 2 meters long, is it? So therefore, it won't need a special overhanging load marker, which is required if the load goes up to 3.05 meters. But quite frankly, if you could carry anything over 3.5 meters of overhang on a motorcycle, I'd be surprised. But should you want to do so, you need to give 2 clear working days notice to local police. You need to have an attendant driving along with you, and you need to use overhanging load markers. Now, what about things that are projecting sideways off the bike? Well, again, the rule is that you can carry something which projects 305 millimeters laterally off the bike to either side, and you can do that without any special provisions or precautions. And again, that bicycle looks like it's well within those restrictions. Although it does raise one interesting question, of course: where does the motorcycle start and where does the load begin? Do panniers and rack, for example, count as part of a vehicle if they're firmly bolted on, or are they considered to be part of a load? Now, I really don't know the answer to that question, but I have to be honest, I doubt that the average policeman will either. Right, so okay, if anybody does know better, do drop me a line. So in theory, having ensured that the bike wasn't about to fall off, they should have simply sent her on away, maybe suggesting that she hung something over the load just to help people see it, even if it hadn't already got your attention. But unfortunately, having attracted the police, it seems she got the full license please treatment, and then it turned out that she had no insurance covering the bike, the motorbike that is. So as a result, her Honda was seized, and so she's likely to receive points and a fine, and she'll only get her bike back, of course, if she can present documents proving it is actually properly covered. Right. Okay. Sue says the bike looks well secured, and she says panniers must counterpass to the bike, so it's not allowed to let them protrude over a white line. Yes. Well, there's all sorts of. That's the problem, isn't it? Lots of definitions about what can and can't be done. So I don't know the answer to that one, but my guess is that they probably are part of the bike. Right, okay, so don't forget you are watching Elevenses with Kevin Williams, and if you want to ask a question or add a comment, I will try to get back to you on air, as I have just done. If I can't get back to you on air, I will do it after the show. And if you want to catch the show on a regular basis, it goes out on Wednesdays and Sundays at 11, and it is available on catch up on my YouTube channel, which is Survival Skills UK. So generally live, occasionally recorded, and very, very rarely I do miss a show, but they're all over on YouTube for you. Right, now a momentous event that has probably flown under the radar for most of us is a new joint venture between the Chinese motorcycle manufacturer CFMoto and the Austrian bike builder KTM. Now, KTM are going to take over the distribution of CFMoto bikes in the UK and Ireland as of January from Quadzilla, who formerly distributed the bikes in the UK. Why is that so important? Well, essentially, the answer is that CFMoto are proving a increasingly popular and affordable option for riders. This is the 650 adventure bike, which has a version of a Kawasaki engine in it. But behind the scenes, KTM and CFMoto have had links for almost a decade since they partnered up to produce small capacity KTM badged bikes for China, which of course, as I'm sure you know, is one of the largest motorcycle markets in the world. So the relationship between the two brands has been flourishing for quite some time. It was back in 2013 that they agreed to produce these motorcycles. Now, the venture was brought closer in 2018 with a joint venture to set up a new factory in China to supply bikes for both China and the developed countries, producing KTM's entire range of future middleweight models powered by the then brand new 799cc, that's the LC8C parallel twin engine, and that made its global debut in the 790 Duke. Now that was a few years ago, and it was all part of a 5-year plan from KTM to actually manufacture 400,000 KTM and Husqvarna motorcycles annually by 2022. So this is the bike in which the engine is used. It's the CFMoto 800 MT, and you can buy that in the UK at just under 10,000. At least that's what it was priced at when it arrived. It may have gone up now. Now, founded in 1989, CFMoto's website claims that the company has always been a step ahead of other Chinese bike manufacturers, and certainly they're the only ones to offer a full range all the way up to a 1278 bike, which is actually in production, and that is the 1250 CF, and it's powered by what's described as a heavily re-engineered version of KTM's LC8 V twin. It's also manufactured under license. It produces 105 kilowatts or 140 horsepower and 120 newton meters of torque, and the bike is currently already in use, I believe, by the Chinese police, and these are a couple of police motorcycles in use. So, okay, that is what's going on. As I say, I think that's a fairly momentous story because it really does suggest that CFMoto are to be taken seriously. Certainly, KTM would never, ever have those bikes in their showrooms alongside their KTMs if they didn't believe that they were at least as reliable as KTMs. draw your own conclusions from that, of course. Right, from petrol to electric, in a stark contrast, really, to the belated attempt in the UK here to catch up with the rapidly rising EV sales by installing infrastructure after the cars were available, and by not making manufacturers responsible in some ways. The Japanese have definitely got a bit of an edge here. The first powered two-wheeler battery swap station has just been installed in Tokyo, and it's been built by Honda. And though Honda has plans for at least 10 electric motorcycles in the next 3 years, the installation actually comes well ahead of Honda's rollout of electrically powered bikes. Now, Honda had previously announced this electric bike swap station. It's called the Honda Power Pack Exchanger E, and it's going to be available initially in Japan and India. The HPPE exchange sites will be built and distributed by a company called Gachako, and they are a joint venture between Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki, and Suzuki, so the big four Japanese bike manufacturers. Now, Honda's batteries, called originally mobile power packs, they're 1.3 kilowatt lithium ion units, so they're pretty tiny. They only weigh 10 kilograms, which basically makes them very easy to swap in and out of a bike. Eventually, they will use solid state technology to reduce weight and increase power density. And the plan is to use batteries that aren't fit for use in a motorcycle to be recycled for home energy storage. Now, each station can charge 12 packs at once, and they can be kind of daisy chained together to make bigger swap stations. And should there be a need, the stored energy in those batteries can actually provide local power back to the grid in case of a blackout. Now, that is something that Japan is prone to, since the area is an active earthquake zone, and when there is a quake, it does tend to shut down the power system. So it'll be interesting to see if Honda and the other Japanese manufacturers, of course, within that consortium, plan to bring their swap stations to the UK when they finally get some electric motorcycles on the road. Now, you may think we pay a lot for road tax for motorcycles in the UK, and please don't write in, by the way, telling me there's no such thing as road tax. I know it's technically called vehicle excise duty, but we do pay a lot compared with smaller cars. If you're unlucky enough to need to park on Hackney streets, for example, you know exactly what the problem is. But the UK has got nothing actually on Singapore. It's not just one of the world's most expensive cities, it's also one of the most expensive, if not the most expensive, in which to operate a motorcycle. Now, to have a vehicle in Singapore, you need something called a Certificate of Entitlement, a COE, and that lasts for 10 years. When you've got one, it means you have the right to own and operate a vehicle. Now, COEs are actually integral to the vehicle quota system, which is operated in the city, which puts a cap on the number of cars and motorcycles which can be operated. Number of cars is limited to about 650,000, and the permitted number of powered two-wheelers is set around 142,000. So here's the bad news. The cost of the 10-year motorcycle permit seems to vary on the basis of how many people actually want one. So I guess it's a kind of bidding or auction system. And for motorcycle, this so-called Certificate of Entitlement has just hit a record 12,801 Singapore dollars. In UK terms, that's about £7,800. That's up over 200% in 4 years, and it's actually more than, of course, than the cost of many entry-level bikes. It's double the cost of a lot of 125s or scooters. Okay, it does go over 10 years, of course, but even if you have an existing permit and you want to renew it for the next 10 years, that's still more than 11,000 Singapore dollars, which is more than £6,700. And again, that's almost 6 times the price it was a decade ago. Now, not only, of course, does the cost of operating a motorcycle affect owners, but it also hits the many delivery riders who earn money from using motorcycles. Many of those actually rent their bikes, and predictably, the increased cost will be passed on in rental terms. Just in case you think that motorcycles are being unfairly targeted, something you could, as I say, argue that road tax does here in the UK, permits for entry-level cars in Singapore now cost over 80,000 Singapore dollars. That's nudging £49,000. Yes, you did hear that right. And that's 3 times more than it was in 2018. Now, not surprisingly, financial experts believe that the price hikes will add to the already widening inequality between residents, since many of the low income workers actually use motorcycles for transport because it is one of the very few cost effective ways to get around. So, fairly appalling. Frankly, amount of money to be paying for a motorcycle, but hey ho, that's what happens in Singapore. Now, don't forget, if you do enjoy the show, you can head over to my coffee page. I've given you the URL earlier to the shop. There's the URL to the page. Buy me a coffee and you become a supporter, and that'll give you access to over 800 better biking articles. Set up a regular payment as a subscriber and you open up access to even more content. Just go over there and have a look and find out what's on offer. There is plenty of free stuff as well, by the way. So, what else have we got in the news today? As I said, it's quite a busy show today. The word is that the much rumored 975 version of the Harley Davidson Pan American isn't too far away. Certainly, I'll be interested to see what they come up with. The original Pan American wasn't actually the prettiest bike in the world. One I did like was this one. This is the Bronx, and the Pan American is using the ultra modern engine which was originally developed for this bike, which was cancelled, by the way. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see it reappear at some point. It's actually the only Harley I've liked to look at for the last 3 decades or so. That motor has already found its way into the Nightster Cruiser, and it's a 975 V-twin, as you'd expect. It's liquid cooled, and one big innovation is it uses a variable valve timing. That's still something of a novelty on motorcycles, although it is likely to become more common as emission regs get tougher. The Nightster gets a tuned airbox, it gets power modes, and it does deliver 88 horsepower at 7,500, fairly high revving for a Harley, and 70 foot-pound of torque, so it's not exactly short of go. And some road testers have actually said that they prefer the smaller, quicker revving engine to the bigger 1250. So my guess is that the new motor probably will suit the smaller adventure bike perfectly if they can keep the weight down, but that is a problem with the 1250, I think. If the 975 Pan America matches the Nightster's pricing as well, it could give Harley a reasonably inexpensive new model. The Cruiser starts at around £13,000 here in the UK. Incidentally, if you have got a Nightster, keep an eye out for a product recall. Back in August, an owner reported that the left-hand end of his handlebar actually broke off whilst he was riding, and Harley have reportedly been alerted to another handlebar failure. So the company informed the US National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, the NHTSA, and they duly issued a recall earlier this month, which is all about a world quality issue, which they say could lead to separation between the inner and outer sections. Well, having had a pair of aftermarket adjustable bars fail in exactly that same way, fortunately, as I was hauling on the left handlebar end to get the bike onto the centre stand when parking, I think that makes it a good reason to design single section bars rather than ones that are welded up. Now, Harley aren't the only ones with a recall, because on BMW, a pretty serious safety recall was issued for some of their machines. The notice actually says, quote, improper 6-gear sets were installed on gearboxes that were replaced during an earlier workshop intervention. This can lead to excessive wear of the control intervals in the event of prolonged driving at full load in 6th gear. In the event of a malfunction, the gear change would not be performed correctly, or 2 gears may be engaged at the same time. The rear wheel may lock and/or the gears may be damaged, increasing the risk of an accident. Now, that particular recall affects the K1600s, the bikes built between 2017 and 2020. I don't know how many specifically are affected, but I'm sure you'll get a letter through the door if you are, because the recall has come from the European Union. BMWs are on recall too on their 1000cc machines, the 4-cylinder bikes. And some of these, it turns out, may have loose clutch covers, which apparently is a result of bolts not meeting the manufacturing specs. So presumably they stretch when they are actually tightened up, stretch more than they should. So oil leaks and quote thermal events could result. I'm not sure what that means. Maybe it's overheating after all the oil's leaked out. I would have thought the skid risk, frankly, would be more serious if the engine lost that much oil. Anyway, the recall is on, as I say, the 3-cylinder 1000cc. 4-cylinder 1000cc bikes. So keep an eye open for that. And finally, after that, the recall for the tyre pressure sticky label not being sticky enough and failing to adhere to the frame on various 1250 models actually seems quite trivial. Right, okay, so that brings me to the end of the news section today. And I'm just going to finish off with a quick discussion about the chains which Regina and BMW have been fitting to some of their motorcycles, because they're claimed to be maintenance free. So say goodbye to chain lube with Regina's new Z-Ring HPE 520 chain, trumpeted one online news source. And the writer continued, Regina's proprietary tetrahedral amorphous carbon coating is responsible for the chain's maintenance-free claim. So can you fit one of these chains, which are available for any bike that actually has a 530 or 520 chain, and dump the aerosol? Well, sort of. The chain was first launched in 2020. Let me get a photo of it up for you. There it is. That's the Regina version. The Z-Ring High Performance Endurance HPE chain is claimed by the manufacturers to be the first chain in the world without maintenance, which allows you to, quote, eliminate periodic relubrication, which should normally be done every 1,000 kilometers. And the fact is that the Italian company Regina announced the launch of this Z-Ring chain just days after BMW announced their own M Endurance maintenance free chain on their own high performance bikes. Now, the M Endurance was also claimed to be zero lubrication and adjustment, whilst offering a service life equivalent to a properly maintained X-Ring chain. Now, the BMW news release, when the chain was introduced, said, like previous X-Ring chains, the M Endurance chain has a resident permanent lubricant filling between the rollers and pins enclosed by X-rings. What is completely new, however, is that the previous necessary additional lubricant addition for the rollers, double addition. Well, that's badly written, isn't it? And thus the familiar chain lubrication is no longer necessary, nor is any retensioning required from time to time due to the usual wear. So basically saying the internal lubrication is held in by the rings, external lubrication no longer required, and they're also claiming no retensioning necessary. So they were supposed to keep the back of the bike cleaner and to eliminate environmental contamination from the sort of flung lubricant. Now, the feature of both these chains, which is very special, is this extremely hard industry diamond, the tetrahedrally amorphous carbon coating on the bushes and also on the rollers inside the chain. So that's the black stuff, basically, that you can see actually here on the roller, and also on the coating on the pin. Now, Obviously, I did wonder whether the Regina and BMW chain are one and the same, and in fact, they turn out that BMW do source their chains from Regina. And the news release just a few days ago was basically to explain that you can now get this in a narrow 520 chain, which will fit bikes like my XJ6. So the theory is that, of course, that if you don't need to lube it or adjust it, that would be fantastic. And there is one of the chains rolled up. Now, interestingly, reading the technology behind this chain reveals that it does actually use something a little bit older, sinter materials. Now, sintering, sometimes known as frittage, is a process which uses compaction to form a solid mass by using pressure or heat, but without causing that material to melt. So basically, you squash something till it is hard. And the key point is, although it becomes extremely hard, it remains porous. Now, motorcycle chains several decades ago were developed using this particular process and sold as self-lubricating chains. They used the sintered metal, the porous nature of the sintered metals, to allow them to pre-impregnate the chain with oil, and the idea was that this oil would seep out over time. It would lubricate that critical area around the pin and the bush where it's most needed. Now, back then the claim too was that only limited additional lubrication was needed, and it would simply prevent damage to the wearing surfaces of the chain and the sprockets. Now, I did have a couple of these on my courier bikes in the early 80s, and they did actually double the mileage over an ordinary chain, but they were rapidly supplanted by the O-ring and then the X-ring chains, which used the seals on every link to trap this grease within the links. Now, the problem is with these chains, the O and X ring chains, is that the seals wear with time, and they're particularly easily damaged if you use them in gritty conditions or if you don't treat your chain well and let rust form on it. So it seems that these new chains actually combine the seals of the modern O and X ring chains. The BMW chain appears to use a conventional X ring. The Regina branded chain appears to use a different Z ring technology, but it combines it with this throwback and almost forgotten technology. The big difference appears to be the addition of a third technology, the hardened low friction coating. But there had to be a but, of course, didn't there? Now, one rider in the US did actually fit the Regina 530 chain to his Yamaha, and he rode it sans maintenance as he was promised. And after 12,000 miles, it was dangerously stretched. He said he wouldn't ride it any further in that state. And it was, when I saw a photo, it was basically showing the telltale kinked links, which tell of a rusted and knackered chain. I would frankly hope to get at least 25,000 miles out of an X-ring chain if I look after it. And I did in fact manage to get 50,000 out of one chain on my old 500 Suzuki when I had a chain oiler fitted. And he's not alone. Another BMW owner who again took the no maintenance to heart, he found that after 4,000 miles the chain was rusting from the inside out. And the interesting thing was that he also discovered BMW would not swap it out under warranty, saying that you still have to service the chain like any other chain. And in fact, read the BMW care instructions, and they do say that the owner should clean and lubricate their apparently maintenance-free chain in 3 situations: after washing the bike, after a ride in wet or salty conditions, or before storing the motorcycle at the end of the season. So in fact, it appears that maintenance-free doesn't actually mean that the chain doesn't need any care. So it still needs this application of some kind of oily product, if only to stop corrosion causing the chain to fail. The other issue is, although there will be this supply of oil trapped in the sintered metal, if the O-rings fail, then it will be washed away and then it will become quickly depleted. So like any chain, my recommendation would be a light lubrication with hypoid gear oil. That's not a no-fling solution, but it doesn't attract grit and dirt like the no fly off chain lube that most people tend to spray over their chains, and the result is then my chain stays nice and clean, and it doesn't get the grit stuck in the O-rings and X-rings, which wreck them in double quick time. Now, presumably, BMW and Regina both do hope that if cared for in the way that the instructions say, so we can forget the no maintenance bit, it should go a significant distance before it needs adjusting. But frankly, that's what I find with an ordinary X-ring chain anyway. I generally replace the rear tire on my bikes about every 8,000 miles. That's what they normally do before they wear out. What I generally find is that once I've fitted a new chain, they'll probably need a slight tweak after about 1,000 miles. And then all I do is adjust the chain every 8,000 miles when I change the rear tire. And as I say, generally I will get about 3 tires to one chain, maybe 4, before I actually need to bin the chain. So truth be told, I'm really not sure what the chain offers that existing chains don't, aside from an extra hit to the wallet, because they they aren't cheap. The list price for the 520 HPE, the new one, is around 250 euro. And if you want the 525, the wider version, it's nearly 300 euro. And I would say that's quite a lot of money for a premium chain. Excuse me. I'm generally paying quite a lot less than that. All right, okay. Hopefully we've all gone out stutter free today. That is the end of today's show. Been a bit of a long one because I had quite a lot to talk about. Hopefully somebody will look in and book up on the forthcoming Wednesday night presentation about sports psychology and how we can learn to ride a motorcycle from our armchair without even going anywhere near a bike, improve our performance. And if you're interested in any of the other products I've mentioned at the top of the show, please have a look at them. And that's it for today. If you are out there on the bike, oh, excuse me. I was about to say, stay shiny side up.